Good evening, everyone. This is Akshata Sangle from Harjai Global Gurukul. Welcome to the HGG webinar on how to plan your education in COVID times, pros and cons of study overseas vis-a-vis India. HGG has been guiding and counseling students for over 15 years and has exponential following of students who are successful world over. With its excellent network and links with a wide range of educational institutes in India and around the world, HGG holds regular seminars, provide advisory services, and promote joint ventures in new areas of education and growth. HGG is a regular participant at international fairs, exhibitions, and information sharing through the media. At HGG, students are able to procure all services under one roof, right from the selection of the course to the visa counseling and transcultural adaptation. In January 2019, we have opened an office in US, Tampa, Florida, which puts us in unique position to assist the student in every way. And our motto is, what is the best fit for the student? Before we go ahead, I want to inform everyone that we'll be having a 20 minutes question answer session at the end of the webinar. Kindly drop your questions in the chat section below. We will be addressing them at the end of this session. Today, we have a very interesting mix of panelists, and I would like to introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is an industry expert, Ms. Aarti Harjai, founder and CEO of Harjai Global Gurukul. With over 15 years of experience in guiding students and professionals alike for their educational needs in India and abroad. She has done her master's in social work from Delhi University and business communication technology from Sunnyvale College, California. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Aarti Harjai to address the question. And the question is, why study abroad? Pros and cons of study overseas vis-a-vis India.
Uh, Thank you, Akshita. Well, the first question is extremely important. Why study abroad, since it is such a huge investment? Well, most of all the top ranked universities worldwide, I would say most of them are located in UK and US, with a few in Canada, Singapore, and Australia. Education abroad is liberal. It allows the student to follow their dreams. They can change their course midway, maybe even do a dual degree, study interdisciplinary subjects within the course. They benefit not just from the state of the art facilities and best of professors and clubs available, but the most important thing that a student gains is the opportunity to learn from their cohort, that is, their peer group from across the world. So their growth as an individual is immense. They get a broader perspective and they learn what we call a people skill. Therefore, it is a complete holistic experience, the experience of moving away not only from your home, but your home country, managing your studies, laundry, cooking, finances. And I must add here that our Indian students are really used to pampering, and it is a big step for them to manage all of this together, which leads to a complete holistic experience. So, most important, I would say, besides all these factors, is that overseas education opens doors to global opportunities and careers worldwide. The investment is definitely huge, I must say, but the return on investment is definitely assured if you make your choices carefully. So, when you plan to study abroad, you could plan your studies along with post study work as well as PR, which is allowed by some countries. So, you could study and come directly back, or you could study, gain some international work experience, and then come back. Any which ways, you would have an edge over the others, as you would come back with not only an international degree, but an international work experience. So now, how do you choose your destination? There are three most important things to keep in mind while choosing not just a course or the university, but also the country. The first is the profile of the student. That is, what is your GPA? What are your scores? So There are some countries that are very liberal in admitting students, like UK and Australia, whereas others are very particular about the GPAs, like Canada and in some instances US. Therefore, profile is important. Secondly, budget, which I must say is equally important, as your budget would range from a mere 10 to 20 lakhs per year of to about 50 lakhs per year. So the range is absolutely huge. And how the profile, the budget, and the long term plan is extremely important in deciding the destination. So now let's come, if you can shift to the next slide, that is India vis-a-vis study abroad. So I have to say, first of all, I'm also a fan of the Indian education system. So if you do get excellent options in India, like the best of the institutions, then definitely you can think of studying here back home. If you get into the IITs for your engineering, or the best of the state engineering colleges, the NIITs, or if you can manage the IIM seats for your, management courses, or you study arts at the NIFT and the JJ, and we have St. Stephen's. The list can go on and on. But more importantly, even some of the new age universities that we have, like we have Flames in Pune, we have Asoka up in North, we have Lancaster, we have Russell Square right here in Mumbai, we have Shiv Nadar, and we have Bennett University. So these are just a few names, and definitely getting into the top institutes is very, very difficult, as there are vast number of students, but the seats are very few. But the new age universities, I would say, do give you a good experience and would not be as tough to get in. So that could also be a choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. Thank you for the expert advice. The second question here is how to prepare for the admission process, when to start, how to go about it, which course to opt for +2, which exams to prepare for undergraduate and postgraduate studies.
Yes, sure, Akshata, I will definitely throw some light on this. So how do you prepare? By understanding what the university wants to see in an application. What will you bring to the university as a student, and how best will you use the resources of the university? Your GPA is of extreme importance. I really have to stress this because many a time students take their GPA very lightly, but it plays a very important role in your admissions, be it in India or abroad. Then your profile is extremely important for study abroad especially. Therefore, you've got to start planning in advance, right from your 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, that is your high school. The first thing is to kind of cross the filters, right? So what are the filters? The filters are basically your GPA, your SAT, or your GMAT, GRE, your TOEFL, IELTS. All these marks are your filters, and only then do you get selected for the second assessment. That is where they kind of assess your profile. Can you move on to the next? Yes. So how do you build your profile? So you build your profile through projects, through shadowing professionals, doing internships, maybe write a blog. I have a lot of students who write blogs. Then you must participate in a social initiative. This is of extreme importance. And we all know that for particular courses, portfolios are also required, like, for the arts courses or the architecture courses, fine arts courses. So you therefore starting preparation well in advance really helps with the application. Next are your essays. Now, I have to say the essay as well as the recommendation, both are of extreme importance. They are the two most important documents after your GPA. And between two academically similar applications, the deciding factor are your essays and recommendations. They are basically the make or break of your application. So let me start by, can you please go to the previous essay? Yeah, yes, thank you. So for the essay, the most important thing is what you should include in your essay is why are you choosing this particular university? Why are you choosing this particular course? What are your aspirations? Who you really are? You need to answer all these questions. And how will you? You need to do a thorough research of the university and of the course in order to answer these questions, which have to be addressed in your essay. Therefore, your essay should be completely unique, specific, genuine, and not a replica of your CV at all. Your CV you're going to submit in your application. And most importantly, your first draft should always be written without any reference to other essays so that it doesn't color your perspective. This is extremely important. And once you write it, you can always share it with your parents, seniors, alumni, and your counselors. So what you have to do is you basically have to demonstrate, you've got to demonstrate how the university is the best fit for you and how you add to the diversity of the classroom. I have to end this, about the essay by saying that it must be an interesting read. Without that, the essay is not going to get you anywhere. And it is here is your chance to share what you have not been able to mention in the entire application. Now, let me go on to recommendations. Choose your recommender carefully. Your recommender must have taught you at least for 1 year. Many a time get students coming to me and saying, ma'am, I know so-and-so, he's very senior, can give me a recommendation. It will have no weightage if that person hasn't directly taught you academically, at least for 1 whole year. Why is this so? This is because the recommender many a times is also asked by the university to fill out very detailed questionnaire about you. Therefore, you have to have an excellent rapport with them. Now, this is a chance for the university to review your application from a third person angle. Therefore, it is extremely important to them. It has to be a complete, honest evaluation, not only praise. That doesn't get you anywhere. And your recommender should be able to talk about your shortcomings and how you've overcome them. Now let's come to the next slide, which is the choice of the subjects, which is extremely important. How do you choose the subject? It's a very, very simple 3 steps. So it is detrimental to your undergraduate admission. Remember that. So what you have to do is identify the course you want to study at undergraduate level. Second, check the entry requirements of that particular course and choose your subjects accordingly. Example, in UK, if you want to study medicine and you do not have mathematics in 11th and 12th, you cannot apply. So a lot of times I get students who've actually dropped maths because in India, you don't need maths to do medicine and they want to apply abroad. Therefore, the preparation you should actually be checking your entry requirements for the bachelor course while you're in 9th and 10th grade. Sounds a little over the top, but that's how it is. Now, example, if you want to be a pilot, you need to have mathematics in 11th and 12th. Without that, you cannot be a pilot. So these are just some examples. Now, the important factors in deciding your career path, there are 3, which I always share with my students. Firstly, identify your passion for the subjects. What do you enjoy doing? Secondly, do you have the aptitude for it? Maybe you want to be a doctor, but do you have the aptitude? Or you want to be an engineer, do you have the aptitude? Thirdly, which is also very important because we live in a realistic world, we also have to see the market scope, the scope of the field that we are choosing. So you may choose a niche course, but you must be aware about the scope of the particular field that you are choosing. Now let's come to the next slide, which is about options. This is really important, as you're aware. In India, after 10th standard, you will have options of either joining your state boards. For example, in Maharashtra, you have the HSC board, or you may join the All India board, which is the CBSE, or the ISC board. And you have the foreign boards, which is the IB and the A levels. So how do you go about choosing them? You go about choosing them by knowing what you want to do at undergraduate level. Now, if you're 100% sure that yes, you're going to go abroad, then there is no really thinking about. You could easily take the IB board or the A levels, or you could study the CBSE and the ISC board. But here I have to make a mark that students applying to Ivy League universities must definitely, go for the IB board. Otherwise, most 95% universities worldwide will accept even the CBSE and the ISC board. The HSC board is mostly for students who have are on a 50-50 chance that they might study in India, they might choose the state boards, or they may go abroad. So for all admissions in India, which are based on your 12th standard marks, I would advise go for your state boards. Now, if you can come to the next slide, the decisions. So to decide the career, a student will have to in India join classes basically. And these classes, for example, if you want to do medicine, you will have to join classes for medicine. If you want to do engineering, for the entrance exam, you've got to join. If you want to go abroad, you have to join the SAT classes. IELTS are definitely easier, but still a lot of students take coaching. So students have to manage between their 11th and 12th grade along with the entrances that they have to give either for India or for study abroad. Therefore, it is really important that you plan well in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. So the next question is, how is the situation evolving in different countries in this phase of pandemic? How universities across the world are responding and planning their roadmap ahead for the upcoming academic year?
Sure, Akshita. So some of the common responses across countries that we've seen from universities, that most universities worldwide, I would say rather all, I have not heard of a single case from my students worldwide, they have been very supportive of the student. Most of the universities are not delaying the starting or the commencing of the September 2020 intake worldwide. The first semester is starting online. I mean, you could do it from your home country or in the hybrid format that they're talking about, wherein you can go to your study destination, study the classes online, but use the university resources, and you will also have access to your professors, labs, etc. Another important point is that they're still charging full fees, even though the first semester is going to be online. But on the other hand, the universities world over are also promising that the post-study work options or the OPT options will not be affected by the online study. Though how they won't be affected is different from for each country, and I'm going to cover that country-wise. The Ministry of External Affairs has already allowed the VFSs to open, and we already have the VFSs working, though right now they're only taking the applications online. Another important thing is all students who are midway between, studying abroad worldwide have had to give their final semesters online from their home countries. And it has worked out pretty fine, and even in India. Now let me start with US. US still remains the dream destination, and universities in US have been extremely supportive of international students. First of all, the bad news is that the H-1B visa has been suspended till this year end. But the good latest news is that as of yesterday night, the spouses of the H-1B visa holders who were stuck back in India have been exempt from this suspension. So that's the good news. Then all STEM courses, that is the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, still get the 3-year OPT. And the non-STEM, of course, get the 1-year OPT. So OPT is not going to be affected by the online classes. The universities have made that very clear. Another important announcement that just came a couple of days back was that the US government has rescinded the recent order to deport foreign students who are studying online. And this was really in favor of all students. Even universities like Harvard, along with the consortium of universities, filed a case against the US government and have got this rescinded. So that's the good news. Now, regarding all the support groups in US from all the universities, some of my students who are around the world have shared a lot of information. For example, universities of Texas, Austin has mental health support groups. University of Southern California is having weekly sessions on Let's Talk for mental health. Emory is giving out free ESL classes. And I'm sharing in the PPT the links of the various free courses that not only Emory, but Harvard University, NYU, and Coursera are giving. So all you students out there must make best use of it. Another important thing for US is that for all admissions in 2020 and 21, the entrance exams, or rather I would say the requirements of the exams to be taken, have been waived. So whether it's the GRE, GMAT for postgrad, or the SAT and ACT for undergrad, or the IELTS and TOEFL, all have been waived. Now, that was just in gist about US. I'll come to UK now. UK has become very interesting as of recent. It has the highest traffic of interest in the wake of the 2-year post-study work visa. That was announced last year by UK. But another very interesting announcement that was made in February 2020 is that UK has launched the permanent residence system for students coming to study after their 2-year post-study work. They could apply for PR. And this PR is based on the Australian PR system, which is the point-based system based on highly skilled professionals. So this is really great news. Now, another thing is British Council is running a free course of 4 weeks on how to prepare to study and live in the UK for all students who are starting courses in 2020 in the UK. So I would advise all students planning to study in UK to take up this free course, the link of which I have shared. Now, we also have, another very important announcement by UK, that even if your entire course is done online, you are still able to get your post-study work visa. Now, this is very important for students who are applying for the master's course in this 2020. The reason being that in UK, the master courses are 1 year. Most of them. I would say 95% courses are 1 year masters. So this is extremely important for them, because in case the entire course is even studied from India, they would still be able to apply for the post-study work in the UK. Now, during the COVID, the universities have really, again, been very favorable to students. So they have, universities have food banks. University of London is giving news updates. There are financial hardship funds that universities have started, dedicated helplines. In fact, University of Bath went to the extent of bringing in all the students who are living outside the campus into the campus, giving them accommodation. There are a lot of online support groups. So besides all this, a very interesting news that I heard was that some of the UK universities are actually chartering planes to bring in their students from India to the UK for the September 2020 intake. So that's how they're rolling out the red carpet for you. Another very important announcement that I heard was that a lot of universities, I have actually this is verified news, that a lot of universities are going to give you the 15-day quarantine if required for free. So this is another very supportive step by the UK. Now, for all those applying for the undergraduation, the UCAS clearing, which has started on 6th of July, is going to be open till 20th of October. So you could actually plan your education in UK as late as October. Your options are all open. The British Council is also running the IELTS indicator that you can give from home, so that would be very helpful. A lot of UK universities, doing away with the stringent laws like asking for recommendation on letterheads. They're doing away with asking for transcripts. So even if you share just your mark sheets, they're accepting it. So they're being very accommodative to the student. And Brexit has given UK an opportunity to devise or revise the immigration policies to attract more international talent and augment the benefits to them. Now let me go on to Singapore. Now, Singapore has handled the COVID situation commendably. There was a study by Harvard that we should all follow the Singapore model, as they really controlled the situation. Now, some of the top universities worldwide are situated in Singapore, NTU and NUS being the top. That is the Nanyang Technological University and the National University of Singapore. You also have INSEAD and HEC, which are the top management schools, top 50 in the world rankings, which also have their branches in Singapore. And Duke's University in US runs their medical program in NUS. So even though it's being a small country, it has immense opportunities for study. Now, proximity to India, only a 5-hour flight. It is the financial hub. So again, an excellent destination. And the laws are very stringent. So I've always seen it's always the favorite in the parents, from the parents' point of view. So I would say that if you're looking at financial, medical, or technical education, Singapore is an excellent destination, and it would even cost you half of what US would cost you. And of course, scholarships are also available. I will now move on to Canada. Now, Canada was a country that enforced the strictest lockdown and contained and managed it really well. There are the top universities like University of Toronto, McGill, and we have University of British Columbia. All these are situated in Canada. Their fees for Canada is not extremely high, and Canada is an excellent destination from point of view of study. After study, get a 3-year work visa and apply for your PR. So students looking at settling down, Canada does become very attractive. Moreover, once you settle and get your PR in Canada, there is a lot of ease of traveling to US and working in the US as well. And Canada has declared that as long as you do 50% of the course online, your work visa will not be affected. Let's move on to Australia, which is the last country I'll be covering. So we all know that the G8, the Great of Eight, are situated in Australia. They are excellent study destinations, especially University of Melbourne, which comes in the top 50. Australia, again, you study, get a work visa, and you can apply for PR, which again is point-based. The federal government of Australia plans to revise its post-study work visa program to include international students completing their degrees online. So they still have to make it a rule, but they are very much in favor and they will definitely do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. Thank you for expert advice. We also have one more question here. So how to plan your future education in COVID times, and what will be your advice as a counselor here?
Now, how to plan your future in COVID times? Well, you could do your course online for the first semester and then move to your study destination for the second semester. Or you could do your course in the hybrid format that a lot of universities worldwide are giving, wherein you can travel to your study destination, study your classes online from your hostel room, but use the university resources to the maximum, that is, the library or the laboratories, as well as you will have access to your course leader. Another option that you could take is that you take your admission abroad this year, but defer it for the next intake, and the next intake could be January 21 or September 21. But how do you do that? You do that by first converting your offer to an unconditional offer by meeting all the entry requirements. After that, you pay your deposit for the course, but do not ask for the refund, and give them a very valid reason for the transfer option. That's how you can plan it. Now, I would say future students should actually choose their country where they want to go to study according to how that particular country has responded to the COVID situation and whether they have responded positively to the students, that is, the specifically international students.
So, okay, so education is the most important thing that you can invest in. It is the most important non-perishable asset that you can invest in, which has the highest return on investment, your highest probability of return on investment. Secondly, students commencing in 2020 or who are midway now in their graduation or their courses will actually graduate when all this is over and the economy is back at its feet. So you don't need to worry. I would say the most affected are those students who are graduating this year. Another important thing is that your work visa options, your OPT, post-study options are not going to be affected. I would say please keep all your options open. It's a fluid situation. We just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And you might want to keep India as a backup plan always. And for undergraduate students, I would advise start your online course from your home country for your first semester and move to your study destination in your second semester. Master students, yes, I would advise you can move on this September and do the course online, but use the university resources to the maximum. Take the hybrid form that they are giving you. So my last advice to all of you, actually I have two. One is that though all the exams have been waived, the moment the vaccine comes, they are going to be reinstated. So I would suggest all your students to keep preparing, whether it's SAT, ACT, GRE, GMAT, IELTS, whatever it is, be prepared. Because ultimately only those students who have the scores will be given preference at the end of it, in case the situation smoothens out. And lastly, I would like to say, students, please, how you will always remember this time as how as an individual you contributed to the society during COVID times. So make sure you do your little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am, for sharing your expert advice. So our second panelist today is Mr. Raj Gilani, who has done his mechanical engineering from VJTI, after which he completed his MSc in aerospace vehicle design and has presently commenced his fully funded PhD from Cranfield University on hybrid electric aircraft, power plant architectures with alternative fuels. This is in collaboration with Rolls-Royce UK. I would like to invite Raj to share his experience of admission in India and in the UK. Over to you, Raj.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Raj Gilani, and so I'm currently pursuing my PhD in aerospace engineering from Cranfield University, which is fully funded with Rolls-Royce UTC. And I did my master's in aircraft design from Cranfield University, where I graduated in 2019. And so I have always had a very strong interest in aircraft design and in low-cost energy solutions. And so after giving my joint entrance exams during the 11th and 12th, and after clearing that, I pursued my interest, and I got got admission in VJTI, Bachelor of Technology in Mechanical Engineering. And so when during in my undergraduate, I was part of my college RCRO modeling teams, and so my interest grew in aerodynamics and aircraft design. And also as my final year project, I had worked on thrust measurement devices for propeller motor combinations. So I wanted to pursue aerospace engineering, masters in either mechanical or aerospace engineering. And so in 2017, I came to Aarti ma'am to help me with for counseling for masters. And I actually was very keenly interested in Cranfield University. Although Cranfield is not very well known, it is only a postgraduate university. But the course is 90% of the course grade actually is project based. It focuses on innovation, and the university has very good industrial connections and is very well known for aerospace courses. And so when I came to Aarti ma'am, she helped me, Aarti ma'am team at Harjai helped me a lot with with my counseling. That is from drafting the statement of purpose to the whole visa process, that is ATAS or CAS. And then after pursuing my master's, so during my master's, as I earlier said, was part of a couple of projects, industry projects. And so one of the industrial project was actually based, because there's been very increased number of in order to reduce the carbon footprint, and also for urban air mobility, that is vehicles which are more efficient than helicopters and vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. So I got admission into so I worked with a VTOL startup in Cranfield, and so my interest grew in urban air mobility. So after graduating from Cranfield University, as it is very difficult for foreign students to get jobs in aerospace engineering, in aerospace related courses. So after that, I wanted to pursue either research jobs or PhD in aerospace engineering. And so I was very lucky actually. In January this year, there was a PhD in hybrid electric aircraft propulsion systems, which was funded by Rolls-Royce. And I had an interview with the chief engineer at Rolls-Royce. And so I'm currently have started pursuing my PhD in hybrid electric propulsion systems from April. And okay, so I'm started my online studying from PhD, and I'll go to UK in September, and that's my experience till now. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us, Raj. And our third panelist today is Mr. Dikshant Kanodia, and he has done his BTech in Engineering Physics from IIT Guwahati, after which he completed his dual degree of Masters in Management and Masters in Business Analytics from Hult International Business School, US. After completion of his master's, Dikshant joined a startup in the Bay Area and ultimately bagged the position of data scientist in Microsoft San Francisco, US. I would like to invite Dikshant to share his educational and professional journey with us. Over to you, Dikshant.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, that sounds good. Just a minute. Hi everyone. So my name is Dikshant Kanodia. I'm currently in the Bay Area working as a data scientist for Microsoft. So let me give you a brief overview about my journey till here in Microsoft. So I was always very fascinated about technology, about computers, about science and mathematics, and I had good aptitude in it. So after my 10th standard, I started to prepare for IIT JEE. So I joined a classes in Mumbai to prepare for it. And during my 2 years of study, I was like pretty dedicated. For IIT JEE preparation, you have to be dedicated. And I always had a target, like at least I have to study for 3 hours per day, but sometimes it used to go way more or way less, 3 hours per day, because my college had like very strict instructions. You have to attend every lecture. So I was doing that as well, but most of the time in colleges, I was just studying for IIT JEE. Then I cracked IIT JEE and got into IIT Guwahati. So I decided to pursue engineering physics because physics was my strong subject in 11th and 12th. And during my time at IIT Guwahati, during those 4 years, I was exposed to a lot of different courses. Since engineering physics is a multidisciplinary field, I was able to explore a lot of different areas, analog and digital electronics, whether it be material science engineering, all these courses. And I remember during my third year, I came across a course called machine learning. I found it very fascinating and started to explore other options in machine learning, like what I could do in it as a career. And that's when I decided, okay, I have to become a data scientist. And after I graduated, I came across Harjay. So one of my sister's professor, he referred me to Harjay. And one of the first things that uh, I got in the interaction with Harjay, with Aarti ma'am especially, was uh, initially that trust was built. And she explained to me the whole process about how it will be for searching colleges for the application. And that trust uh, paid off a lot. Like it helped me a lot to decide to go with Harjay. And once I bagged the admissions for my master's program, after that as well, Harjay was very cooperative. They helped me a lot in my process uh, for the visa interview preparations. Even after that, about US house hunting with colleges and all, helping me connect to other students over here in US, and that was pretty helpful as well. So that's my journey to Harjay. And then after that, when I came here in California and Bay Area, especially, it's the hub of startups, and I always wanted to work in the Silicon Valley. So I did completed my double masters in international business and business analytics from Hult International Business School. My focus was in data science. I got a very good experience of working in one of the startups in Bay Area. I worked in the startups for like 9 months. So during my time, I was a data analyst over at the startup, and I got a pretty good exposure about how startups work in the Bay Area. So that gave me a pretty good exposure of the startups world over here. But I also wanted to progress more into the data scientist track. I wanted to get more exposure of that, and I worked pretty hard. It was very difficult to find a job, and I was looking for a switch in job, especially during this COVID times. And that's when I came across the opportunity at Microsoft. So uh, the interview at Microsoft the interview experience was pretty good. They were asking questions where you actually have to think through the situations. They were giving new situations. I had like 6, 7 rounds of interviews, the whole day interviews, and it was pretty good. Like the C-suite executives were taking some of the interviews as well. So it was a pretty good experience, and I bagged the position at Microsoft, and currently I'm working as a data scientist at Microsoft, dealing with some of the data which I can't discuss. So I've signed a confidentiality clause, but yeah, most of my job is of data science,
Thank you.
and that's it from my side.
No problem. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, Dikshan. Now we'll be
Welcome.
commencing with a question answer session, and we'll be answering to frequently asked questions. So we have few questions here. The first question is for Aarti ma'am. Aarti ma'am, is it advisable to still go with the fall 2020 intake or defer our plans for fall 2021?
Well, here I would like to say that I think because the situation is so fluid, you should ideally start your course online, be it in India or abroad, do your first semester, and then move on abroad if you are an undergrad student. Now, if you're a postgrad student, you could definitely move on directly in September, or if you want to take a year's gap, you should have a job that you're doing, and from home, of course. Right now it's all home. And also so I guess one should not stop plans for studies unless you are a working professional and you want to continue working for one more year and then take a break. But I would say this is the best time to take a break, because career wise you would not have such a lot of growth during COVID time. So you could actually use this time for your education. Thank you.
So we have one more question for Aarti ma'am. Aarti ma'am, is it worth it for the students to invest in overseas education in 2020, keeping in mind the COVID situation?
Absolutely yes, because as I said, most important that you are going to be, by the time you graduate, the COVID situation will be over, the economy will be back at its track. Therefore, it is worth investing.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. So we have next question for Raj. Raj, what is the basic process of applying for a PhD in UK?
So basic process for PhD. So first you need to prepare your, so actually have a look at what are professors' interest, and if there are some already PhD available on the website. Most of the PhDs are actually only for EU or UK students, but there may be some for international candidates. Then you need to prepare your cover letter, and you need to get good literal recommendations from the professors, and at least 2 or 3, and that's it. And then directly apply for the PhD either on the portal or contact the professor, and then there will be multiple rounds of interviews. And if either, mostly the best chance for international students to get PhD is look for a funded PhD by either by an industry, because there's a very huge difference of fees between international and EU students. So that's why. So if it's industrial funded, I think then you need to just go through the whole process, which had been earlier described. There's no difference as such in the process. And it's such that you need to be clear what your research aim is. And that's about it.
Thank you, Raj. So we have next question for Dikshan. Dikshan, how was the hiring process at Microsoft? How did you bag the job?
Okay, so the hiring process at Microsoft is actually pretty good. Like they do a very good job in bringing the candidates in, making them feel valued. So initially you will have like some 30 to 40 minutes interview with the hiring manager. They'll look at your resume, and this I'll give, like, this is the process that I'm telling. It's general for like all the tech companies which hire for data scientists or for any other roles. So you'll have initially a talk with the hiring manager, and mostly it's regarding the basic skills that is needed for the job, uh, as well as your resume. So you will discuss things like that. They'll try to gauge mostly the cultural fit. So that's one of the things that is important, especially in the US. In the first interaction, they'll try to gauge whether you'll fit their culture or not. That is more important than what you know. That's, I would say. Then second round I had interview was a technical screening interview. So that was with one of the team members that I'm currently working with. So they'll also ask questions which are related to the technical skills or the things that you'll do in your job. So I was mostly asked questions on Python, on statistics, on machine learning, things like that. And that was like a 1 hour interview. Then there was another interview, which was like a product analytics interview. Again, a screening interview, a lot of basic questions, plus there will be some questions which are of high level. So the thing that one needs to remember in these interviews are that all the interviews, starting from the hiring managers till the interviews that I've discussed till now, all the questions they ask you, there will be some kind of dedicated points. So suppose there are like 5 questions they are going to ask you, and each question will carry, suppose, 10 points. So it is important that you answer each question, but the thing that you should remember is never say anything that you don't know, like lie or something like that, or pretend that you know something. It's okay to say, okay, I don't know this thing, but I think this problem can be solved in this way. That gives the interviewer an impression that, okay, you know that you are not a know-it-all. Nobody is a know-it-all, but you are trying to tackle the problem in a way, whatever way you decide based on the question, and that really gives a perspective to the interviewer that, okay, how you think, how you tackle the problem, that's important as well. Then the final interview was like a whole day interview. So these are called loop interviews. You will have interviews with several team members, as well as there could be interviews. Like in my case, the interviews was with my hiring manager's boss. So it was like the leadership team that I had the interview with. So things like that happen. Same on my loop interviews day, the first interview was technical screening interview. That was with another of my teammates that I'm currently working with. So this was a level higher than the previous tech screening interview that I had. Questions were based on machine learning, Python, statistics. but mostly what they wanted to see, and this is for every company, they want to see how you think through a problem. And all these interviews which I'm saying about, they have, each question has some points, so it's important that you answer them. It's okay to admit and even to say to the interviewers that, okay, you don't know this thing, or can you help me in this way? Or the subtle way to say it is that I'm thinking that this problem can be solved in this way. Am I moving in the right direction? So that gives you that the answer that the interviewer gives you a hint whether you're moving in the right direction or not, and you can decide in that way. So in the loop interview, my first interview was the technical screening. The second was with a PM. That was tech plus product analytics. Third was again with my hiring manager. It was uh, more of a product analytics interview, more of data science interview, questions about how I would use a particular data to answer business questions, to solve business problems. The last interview, and that is, I guess, the most important interview, is your behavioral interview. So behavioral interviews are interviews where they gauge your answers to check whether you are culturally fit or not. And the thing about the loop interviews, and this applies to all the tech companies and all the big companies who do this loop interviews, is that all the people who are taking your interviews has to give you a approval that, okay, you are good for hire. So that is the most important part.
Thank you, Dikshant. So we have the next question for Aarti ma'am. Aarti ma'am, few students have these questions, with the most frequently asked questions. So what if I take an online class and my visa gets rejected after that?
Yeah, this question has been asked by a lot of students, but I've got to tell you that there are no guarantees for visa. So you might start the online class and not get the visa. That is one thing I need to stay straight on. But on the other hand, I want to say that if you are going to a valid university and if your visa paperwork is in order, there is no way your visa will be rejected. So that's the answer.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. So we have one more question here. So will admissions for Jan and September 2021 will be tougher?
Yes, I guess they will be tougher. And the reason is that those who have deferred the admission will also have been taken the seats for which the normal 21 students are fighting for. So half the seats are already taken by those who deferred their admission for 21. So yes, it is going to be a challenge. And if I can add here, there is a question for me from Abhirup Kumar, that what is the scope for management courses by the end of 2021? And looking at the state of the economy, should one look for jobs right after completion of undergrad or continue with postgrad immediately? Now, this question I can only answer if Mr. Abhirup can tell me that which is the country destination. Now, if it's management, ideally, I could say that it is good to take some work experience before going on for your master's, always. So by the end of 21, I believe the economy would be back and you could definitely take some work experience, because this is management we are talking about and not the technical education. Technical education you can always do in continuation, but management, I feel, to do a MBA or MIM, you should ideally have at least some experience. Yes, Akshata, you can continue.
So we have the next question for Raj here. Raj, how was your experience of studying in VJTI?
So my experience of studying in VJTI was actually pretty good. So if supposing you're not getting admission in of your choice in top colleges, that is in IITs, then for people who are for the state students, I think VJTI is a pretty good college. But it's not completely, it's not a perfect, college is perfect, but they're very nice. A lot of our students participate in competitions. That is for either for RC aircrafts or even for robotics. We have a very solid club, and then even for automobiles, and the professors are very helpful, and also the final projects are pretty good. And I would say that overall the experience of studying in VJTI was very good.
Yeah. So we have next question for Dikshant here. So Dikshant, was it worth it leaving your home at 18 to study at IIT Guwahati? How did you manage?
That's a very good question, actually. So if you would have asked me this question when I left for IIT Guwahati, uh, 10 years, like around in 2012, 8 years ago, after I reached IIT Guwahati, I would have said no. And the reason for that is, okay, at that time I was pretty excited uh, that I was getting into IIT Guwahati. It was my dream to study in IIT, and I was excited as well. But at that moment, I was very pampered kid, so I never left my home for 18 years. And but looking at retrospect, yes, it was worth it decision because it taught me a lot of different skills. It taught me how to stay on my own, how to judge people, how to get in company of good people, how to manage yourself, how to manage your time, how to manage your space, how to manage your room. All these life skills were taught to me at that moment. Those 4 years were very good learning experience, and you can say that's why I'm managing myself very well. Like I am a kid who stayed with his family for 18 years. I mean, I love my family a lot. So, but still, like right now, it's been more than 1.5 years that I haven't seen my family, but I'm managing myself well. So I would say in retrospect, yes, it was worth it. And the thing is, the things that makes it worth it is because 4 years at IIT Guwahati, they teach you life skills. Like we all assume that okay, if we study well and if we do our studies well, we are going to be successful in our careers. That is just one part. You also need to manage other things, and those are the important life skills that you get at that I got at IIT Guwahati. With my 4 years, you can say that cracking IIT, people generally assume that cracking IIT JEE is the hardest thing. I would say surviving at IIT for 4 years is the most hardest thing.
Thank you, Dikshant. So we have one more question for Aarti ma'am here. So we have Anish Sood asking us, most of the student wants to do computer engineering these days. What do you suggest for mechanical engineering in today's world?
The two engineerings which are of highest demand, which have a lot of scope after completion, are both mechanical as well as computers, because mechanical is a basic degree that will allow you to study, go into different branches. And for example, if you want to start aerospace engineering, you want to study aeronautical engineering, or if you want to so there are a lot of different streams that you could go from after mechanical as well. So I would advise you to do where your interest lies. As I had said in my talk, the interest and aptitude are extremely important. If you don't enjoy coding, or if you don't think of computer science just because it has excellent scope. So, and if you love what you do, then you will definitely be successful. I have a right example here, because Raj Gilani was a little skeptical for doing this particular course because he was worried about the scope after completion. But, I guess his family and all of us together guided him that he should go where his heart takes him, especially in the field of education, and it leads to your career, and, you have to work all your life. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have one more question from Shivani Nitsure. So she has a question, will online course affect future job prospects? What is the future job scenario for masters in public health?
Masters in public health has excellent job scope, be it in UK, US, Australia, anywhere. And your you're not going to be affected because you did your course online. The reason is that this has happened with the entire world. It's not happened only to one particular country. So it's happened to the entire world. So you don't need to worry about that point. Of course, there is a disadvantage of doing it only online. I'm not saying there's not a disadvantage, but then everybody is at the same platform. And Masters in Public Health is in the short skill list in most of the countries. So definitely, this is a good option for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. So I guess that's a wrap for this webinar, and I would like to thank our panelists and attendees for joining us. And please do not hesitate to contact us for any of your queries. Our contact details are displayed on the screen.